In this video, I want to talk with you about the science you know today. I've told you in many videos that the way that science began, the field of science, okay, we're not talking about, let's just say this right up front. I'm not talking about something that you can observe. Like you observe something, okay, cool. Any monkey can do that. But when you make a field in which you observe and then from that observation, now you make a story, that's a totally different thing. Now you make postulations and theories, and those theories and postulations are fundamentally predicated on a belief that you evolved and that there's no creator. That's a different thing. That's called Antichrist. That is denying the creator who is Jesus Christ. That is Antichrist. So let's define what we're talking about. When I talk about the science you know today, I'm not talking about observation. I'm not talking about whether or not a baby has female or male genitalia. I'm not talking about that. You can look at that and you know what? You can make your determination as to whether God made this baby male or female. That's an observation. Third world countries know how to do that, and somehow America has postulated itself into utter insanity. See, that's what God hands you over to when you're wise in your own eyes. Observation is not science. God did not create science. God created everything. Man made science from that. Man constructed a field in order to covet and usurp the glory of God, and he did it by the spirit of Satan, because that is the agenda of Satan. And you know why Satan was able to do that through man? Because man succumbed to the desires of their flesh for glory, power, and greed. Here's how science started. In the beginning, God made everything. God called a people to himself. He established the truth. He told them, this is what you're to do. This is how you are to behave. This is how you are to conduct yourselves. And what did man do? No, we don't want that. We want a human king. We want to make up our own rules. We want to make up what the truth is and what reality is. And so what happened? Philosophers and wise in their own eyes people separated from God and started to write up their own gospel. They separated from what God established. And over time, human beings started setting these people up as idols and experts, doctors and heroes. God said in Exodus 15:26, if you listen carefully to the Lord your God and do what is right in his eyes, if you pay attention to his commands and keep all his decrees, I will not bring on you any of the diseases I brought on the Egyptians, for I am the Lord who heals you. Up to that point, there had been no disease or illness in the Bible, no documentation of that. Look it up. He was demonstrating something here. He was introducing illness and disease and letting them know, look, you saw what I did to them. I won't do that to you if you pay attention to my commands and keep all my decrees. And you do what is right in my eyes, not what is right in the justifications of your own mind and heart. So as time progresses, people are, they have stepped away from God. They've turned to other gods. They've turned to other idols. They've turned to human experts. They've started to use tinctures and potions. The origin of the word pharmacy or pharmaceutical, pharmakia, which throughout history has been witchcraft, sorcery, and has been used as a drug to put someone under the influence of a spell, for example. You remember as well that Ahaziah sent his men to go consult of Beelzebub as to whether he was going to live or die when he fell through the lattice in the roof. And now that's commonplace. We're going to go to our doctor to tell us whether we're going to live or die, to predict for us what God is going to do with his own creation, to give us pills, to put us under a spell, to defer to them as to whether we're going to live or die. Well, let me tell you about the fate of Ahaziah. Elijah told him, because you have sent your men to go and consult a Beelzebub as to whether you're going to live or die, is there no God in Ekron that you did that? Now, because you did that, you will surely die. Do we think we're going to bypass the sovereignty of God, somehow circumvent having to rely on him, having to deal with our sin and our uncleanliness and our defilement that led to the issues that we're dealing with today? Because I believe in a God who's sovereign, and I believe in not inciting his jealous wrath. Let's talk about the science you know today. I've told you that in these end times, Satan has established under the sovereignty of God, not under the sovereignty of Satan. There is no sovereignty of Satan. Satan has established under the sovereignty of God to fulfill the plan of God, disciplines, fields, idols, false gospels, false covenants, false messiahs. Everything that Satan has established is going to come together. It's all being reconciled. Now remember that Satan has a divided kingdom. Remember that Babylon the Great, Catholicism, and the prostitutes that bore out of her through the Reformation, that go and follow after man's doctrines and man's gospels, idolizing man at pulpits, setting up idols and false human messiahs, believing in false covenants, pre-tribulation rapture. I don't have to do anything. Look, all the burden was on the Jews. Satan has a divided kingdom. They all hate each other, but you know what? They come together for a common purpose, and God will make them of one mind. They're still going to hate each other. They're still going to fight against each other, but they will come together for a moment in order to give power to that Antichrist of counterfeit Christianity, Catholicism, papal Rome, the harlot riding the beast, the woman, the church riding government. It's all going to come together. It's all going to be reconciled. That's why Francis preaches this message of reconciliation, despite the fact that it is completely grotesque that a victim would ever want to reconcile with their perpetrator. And yet he preaches it all the time. And I don't know why no one's standing up going, you know what? We asked for an apology from the Catholic Church for all of these disgusting abominations that have occurred. What are you talking about, sir? No one asked to be reconciled to you. No one asked for your authority. But you know what? You know what's crazy? In a way, they did. Because I don't understand, why would you need a public apology from the Catholic Church when they continue to do these things? Why would you need that in order to heal? Because you've placed your healing in man rather than God. So in a way, you have. I don't need any apology from any of my abusers because I believe in a God who vindicates. I believe in a God who is going to give me justice, and I'm not going to sit before some abuser who keeps doing these things all throughout the world. Otherwise, they wouldn't need a worldwide organization for the victims of those who've been abused and killed and raped by nuns and priests. Obviously, this is still going on. Obviously, they are not repentant. Why would you need to hear an apology that is fake? You just set that person up as an idol, that you need that in order to heal, rather than God. So, of course, they're going to do the thing that abusers do when you keep going back to the abuser because you think that the abuser is the one responsible for making you okay. And because of that idolatry, you'll keep being handed over to it. And that abuser, while they're giving you their fake apology, is also going to set up their authority again and again and again because you have given them authority. So please be aware of what you're doing. When you keep setting up that idol, and you can have no peace and no rest until they do something. Your peace and your rest come through God. That message of reconciliation is being preached by this abuser of papal Rome in order to bring together everything that Satan has established. All you have to do is look at the field of science. Who are they connected with? You know the spirit behind. You know the spirit behind the systems they are connected with. What's the spirit behind Big Pharma? What's the spirit behind insurance companies? What is the spirit behind politics that promote all of that and coerce you into bowing down to that God? What's the spirit behind marketing? What is the fruit of these fields? Is mental health doing something so special for humanity? What's the fruit, guys? And now you have Christianity, counterfeit Christianity, testifying to politics. That's their God, their human king. That's what's going to save them. That's what they preach from the pulpit, not Jesus Christ. Politics and government who coerces you into receiving the jab, or they're going to take away your freedom. A pope who in 2014 made this statement: when we read about creation in Genesis, we run the risk of imagining God was a magician with a magic wand able to do everything. But that is not so, Francis says. He created human beings and let them develop according to the internal laws that he gave to each one so that they would reach their fulfillment. This article comes from the Smithsonian, by the way, and it says that the Roman Catholic Church has recognized Darwinian evolution for the past 60 years. It openly rejects intelligent design and young earth creationism, saying that it pretends to be science. But the church's unique take on the theory, what it calls theistic evolution, still shows that Catholics have largely missed the point. So Francis denies that God created. Francis would like you to believe in evolution, in a theory and a field that fundamentally rejects Christ who created us. Do you know what that's called? Do you know what the word identifies that spirit as? That is the Antichrist. And so you need to be able to discern that spirit behind a system, a human being, a church, a theology, a doctrine, a gospel, a version of Christ, a version of a covenant. You need to be able to identify that. Here is the same man who thinks that he has the authority and that it's essential to write an entire plan and new commandments to combat climate change, to lead you toward the work of your hands and praying in a way that God has not told you to pray. God has told you to return to him and he will heal you. He has not said, pray for the earth. He sent that judgment for a reason. And if you don't learn the lesson of why he sent it, don't expect him to relent. So Francis has devised an entire doctrine that is anti-biblical, anti-Christ, in order to deceive you from understanding what Christ actually requires. So here you have the Antichrist spirit of Satan in Francis, testifying to the Antichrist spirit in science, and science testifying to the Antichrist spirit in pharmakia, the Antichrist spirit in politics testifying to the Antichrist spirit in pharmakia and insurance. Mandatory insurance for everybody, whether you believe in that or not. You will pay the price. All of these things pat each other's pockets, all of them testifying to each other, all for individual gain. What is the one experience in history that you would say was most resembled what we have seen in Scripture regarding the Antichrist reign? It would be the reign of Hitler. And there has been plenty of evidence to demonstrate that the Catholic Church was involved in that reign of Hitler. Many documentaries and many people who speak and say, oh no, this was it, they weren't involved. The Catholic Church had a huge presence in Germany at the time, by the way. And the Pope didn't come out and speak anything. He didn't say anything until the rest of the world had caught on. Why? Why is that? And he hardly said anything. He hardly took a stance. There are pictures of Catholic priests with Hitler. Pictures of Catholic priests doing the Hitler salute. Pope Pius XII's silence spoke volumes. You need to pay attention to who's connected with who. I look at people like Jonathan Cahn who go and, here he's like interviewing with people like Kenneth Copeland and CBN. Why? You're never going to see me doing something like that. I will never associate myself with people like that. You don't justify that. You don't start saying, oh, well, he's trying to get the message out there. No, he doesn't trust God to get the message out there. God has said you don't have anything to do with those people. So when you see people associating themselves with people with whom they should not be in agreement, and you see that they're doing it anyway, the reason why they're doing that is because they are in agreement. They are in agreement with those people. And when you see them shutting their mouths like cowards, they won't stand up. They won't say this is wrong, even though they have the power to shut that down. You need to recognize the spirit that's going on in that person, in that system. You think that people who work within big pharma and insurance companies, that they don't know that what's going on there is wrong? I know from personal experience, you end up seeing what's going on. When I was working in hospitals, I saw what was going on. I was not okay with it. I reported those places. I spoke up. And you know what everyone else did? They just kept quiet. Kind of like when the Nazis said, well, we were just following orders. So years later, you can condemn them, but you look at the Pope and you say, well, he was just staying out of political matters. What? Since when? He had more power than Hitler ever had. He was in agreement. It is no secret that the Catholic Church has persecuted and hated and had hostility toward Jews and toward Christians. persecuted, burned them at the stake, fed them to wild animals, tortured them, stripped them of everything they had, made them wear yellow bonnets and live in ghettos. Outright hostility. It's not a secret, but the Catholic Church always puts out propaganda to, don't look over here, don't look behind the curtain. Well, here's the science you know today. The support which I receive from Germany is my chief ground for hoping that our views will ultimately prevail. Our views will ultimately prevail. What's he saying? We're in agreement. You know who said this? Charles Darwin in 1868. The support which I receive from Germany is my chief ground for hoping that our views will ultimately prevail. What you talking about, Charles Darwin? You ever heard of social Darwinism? You ever heard of eugenics? Because Darwin was claiming that there was something called natural selection, that only the fittest survive and reproduce. And this had major implications for human society. And he claimed and taught and preached that civilized societies are harming society when they help the poor and care for the sick, because nature would have eventually killed them off and taken care of them. He claimed that over time, civilized races will exterminate inferior ones. Here's what he said in The Descent of Man. At some future period, not very distant as measured by centuries, the civilized races of man will almost certainly exterminate and replace throughout the world the savage races. Hello, Darwin, the father of the science you know today. You know, the one who said there is no God, the one who said that you evolved, the one who preached that you should not care for the poor or the sick, that you should not care about the things that God established, that you should veer off and discover your own ideas apart from God and his word. It's not a secret that the scientists of that day were promoting competition and extermination, this social Darwinism. That's not a secret. It's well documented. Friedrich Helwald, a German ethnologist in 1875, said this: just as in nature the struggle for existence is the moving principle of evolution and perfection, so also in world history the destruction of the weaker nations through the stronger is a postulate of progress. Or how about German zoologist Gustav Fager in 1870? The war of annihilation is a natural law, without which the organic world could not continue to exist at all. Says who? Says who? That's a postulation, guys. That's a postulation that we just accept it because some expert told us. What do you mean the organic world could not continue to exist at all? God's not capable? Oh, right, there is no God. I forgot. Never mind, he will bless you for obedience. Never mind, he will punish you for disobedience. Never mind, take care of the poor and the sick and the foreigner among you. Never mind all that. We have a different God now. It's called science. According to Darwin's theory, warriors have always been of the greatest importance for the general progress of the human species. The physically weaker, the less intelligent, the morally lower must give place to the stronger. That's Heinrich Ziegler, 1893. He was a German biologist. This is the science you know today. With whom was it in agreement? What is the spirit that it combined with, that it reconciled with? What is the harlot riding the beast that supported it? The harlot that sent out missionaries that treated people in Africa, like the Herero tribe, for example, as though they were less evolved, that they were baboons. The Herero tribe was exterminated, and then their remains sent to Germany to be studied. Who was doing this? It's not white versus everyone else, guys. Stop making this a battle of flesh and blood. It just so happened that those coming out of the German Catholic Church or the Roman Catholic Church were phenotypically white, and that they were doing these things. But this is not all white people. This is that harlot riding the beast. It is that antichrist. It is not a battle of flesh and blood. This is a battle that is in the spiritual. And those making this a physical battle are of that same spirit. Those who keep promoting that are of the same spirit. Darwinian theory, the science you know today, justified using race, turning their backs on the poor and the sick, and war for existence, pitting God's creations against each other. Now listen to this statement. The law of selection exists in the world, and the stronger and healthier has received from nature the right to live. Has received from nature, not God, huh? The stronger and healthier have received from nature the right to live. Anyone who is weak, who does not stand his ground, may not expect any help from anyone. Who said that? That was Hitler. The Antichrist in science is the same Antichrist that justified the genocide of Jews, that justified the genocide of Christians. It is in science. It is in Catholicism. It was in Hitler. It was in the Nazis. And you know what the Catholic Church likes to do is they hide behind a subset of people within the church, a subset of priests, for example, like the German priests who were, who there are plenty of pictures of them doing the Hitler salute. And as a matter of fact, gave their vote for Hitler to become a dictator. In March 23rd, 1933, in Berlin at the Reichstag, German Catholics voted to give Hitler full power, and he was given full reign to impose his dictatorship. Why? Because of their vote. And the Catholic Church likes to hide behind and say, no, that was a subset. Oh, no, this was the zeitgeist at the time. This was the thought. These were the beliefs. Well, wait a minute. Why didn't you wield your power? You had more power than he had. If he needed your vote, you had more power than he had. A universal power? You mean to tell me you couldn't do anything about that? You couldn't take a stand? You couldn't use your words to condemn what he was doing? To condemn this vote of German Catholics? To say we'll have no part in that? No, they hide behind it. This was the thinking at the time. This was the belief at the time. Well, wait a minute. I thought you say that your Pope is the vicar of God. How do you say that? And then say, well, we've had many corrupt popes. How have you had many corrupt popes when you claim that he is the vicar of God? How is it possible that you went along with the zeitgeist of the time instead of taking a stand according to the word of God? How is that possible? How is it possible that they have a pope who testifies to that science, who testifies to that Antichrist evolution theory? How? That article was written in 2014, so at that time they were saying that he had acknowledged it for the last 60 years, so now it's been 70 years they've been acknowledging evolution, Darwinian evolution over the creation of God. How? How is that possible? That someone claiming to be the vicar of God, claiming to be leading God's church, how's it possible that this is what they're speaking, that this is what they align themselves with? How can they say things like pedophilia is the shame of the Catholic Church, but they don't address it? How did they allow, in March 28th, 1933, German Catholics to officially become Nazis? How is it that priests joined the Hitlerite party? Pope Pius XII was urged to condemn Hitler, and he didn't do it. You know why? In part because communism brought down the Roman Catholic power, brought down that Antichrist the first time. And Stalin was a threat. And Pope Pius XII knew that Hitler was keeping Stalin at bay from invading Europe. He supported, long before Hitler, he supported anti-Judaism. The Catholic harlot persecuted Jews and Christians, murdered them, made them live in ghettos, stripped them of everything they had, tortured. It is not a secret that Catholics were not fond of Jews. It is not a secret that they were hostile toward Jews. And while Hitler was rounding up Jews in Rome, Pope Pius XII did nothing. Absolutely nothing. He did not speak up. He did not condemn it. Supposedly 4,000 Jews were hidden in convents, but he didn't say anything, not even encouraging others to take care of Jews. People did that on their own. This was the leader of God's church? I don't think so. What's the fruit now? What can you expect from the Catholic Church today? Well, you can expect them to continue to speak on the authority of that Antichrist spirit of Satan, exactly as he's doing, exactly as Francis is doing, speaking on that field that postulates, that leads you away from the Word of God and into a premise that God does not have the power to create, as he told us that he created, but that you evolved. Let me read to you the definition or the description of the Antichrist. Daniel 11, verse 36. The king will do as he pleases. He will exalt and magnify himself above every god and will say unheard of things against the God of gods. He will be successful until the time of wrath is completed, for what has been determined must take place. He will show no regard for the gods of his ancestors or for the one desired by women, nor will he regard any god, but will exalt himself above them all. Instead, he will honor a god of fortresses, a god unknown to his ancestors. He will honor with gold and silver, with precious stones and costly gifts. Is the God of science a god of fortresses? This authority on which he speaks, this God that he causes you to defer to. Verse 38. Instead of them, he will honor a god of fortresses, a god unknown to his ancestors. He will honor with gold and silver, with precious stones and costly gifts. He will attack the mightiest fortresses with the help of a foreign god, and will greatly honor those who acknowledge him. He will make them rulers over many people and will distribute the land at a price. At the time of the end, the king of the south will engage him in battle, and the king of the north will storm out against him with chariots and cavalry and a great fleet of ships. He will invade many countries and sweep through them like a flood. He will also invade the beautiful land. That's you. Many countries will fall, but Edom, Moab, and the leaders of Ammon will be delivered from his hand. He will extend his power over many countries. Egypt will not escape. He will gain control of the treasures of gold and of silver and all the riches of Egypt, with the Libyans and Cushites in submission. But reports from the east and the north will alarm him, and he will set out in a great rage to destroy and annihilate many. He will pitch his tents, his royal tents, between the seas at the beautiful holy mountain. Yet he will come to his end, and no one will help him. Him, by the way, is Satan. Do not interpret this to be a man. It's very clear in Revelation that this is a kingdom. This is a woman riding a beast. It is a church that is controlling government. The Antichrist that is going to be revealed, the Antichrist, first of all, is Satan. The Antichrist that is going to be revealed, the beast to whom Satan, the dragon, gives his authority, Revelation 17, is papal Rome, is the woman riding the beast. And you need to remember that that woman, that church has prostitutes that have bore out of her. She is the mother of all prostitutes. Babylon the Great, the mother of all prostitutes. It was papal Rome the first time. Think Spanish Inquisition, and it'll be papal Rome the second time. We already know that it is a kingdom that rose, then fell, but will rise again. That's Revelation 17. I'm sorry, the previous one was Revelation 13. I got them confused. The one with regard to the dragon giving power to the beast. Revelation 17 tells us that this kingdom was already in power. It is defined between Daniel 7 and Revelation 17. There should be no confusion. What I'm trying to get you to understand is how these systems, how what Satan has established under the sovereignty of God is being reconciled, is being brought together. What this has looked like throughout history. This is the science you know today. This is Christianity, as you know it today, counterfeit Christianity. As long as we're postulating, might as well postulate about what God's written, right? God forbid you actually learn who he is from him, from his spirit and his word. Nope, while we're at it, let's just go ahead and postulate because, we're so smart. This is the science you know today. This is the religion you know today. It is Antichrist. It is rising even as we sit here right now. Through things like Christian nationalism, a combination, campaigning for the Antichrist, campaigning for a combination of church and state. I don't care who founded this country. Frankly, I do not care what human beings founded this country and what they wrote and what they meant and were they actually Freemasons. I don't care. The only thing I care about is what God was doing. And God gave us a place where we could be free of persecution and we could worship freely and we would be prospered if indeed we obeyed him and pursued him. And look what we did with it. You know what it's become? It's become the false prophet of Revelation 13. This is the false prophet, the United States, testifying to this Antichrist, campaigning for this Antichrist. That's what's going on right now. This is the false prophet. And you're going to see it continue. It is going to succeed because God's words will be accomplished. They will be fulfilled. And the word says you're going to be shocked when you see the Antichrist rise again. You are going to be shocked. I don't care what's being used in order to make that happen. The greed of Biden and his family, receiving kickbacks from, foreign nations, from Ukraine, from China. I don't care what God is necessarily using in order to make that happen. What I mean by I don't care about it is that I'm not focused on that. What I'm focused on is what is God fulfilling? What is he using in order to make his words come together, his plan come together? He'll deal with people like Biden and his family. He will deal with that. Those people are going to their destruction. I'm not caught up in the politics of it. That's what I'm saying. God did establish this nation. He did establish it in order for people to escape the persecution that they were experiencing at the hands of Papal Rome, at the hands of the Church of England. He did establish this country for his people to have freedom of all races, guys. We need to be looking within the lens of Scripture, not man. I don't listen to man tell me what to think because I know the word and I recognize what God is fulfilling. If God is using the greed of the Biden family in order to bring this unity between this false prophet of the United States and Europe, the 10 kings, the Germanic tribes that became Western Europe, in order that that little horn of Papal Rome will rise again in a couple of years, well, then that's what God is using. Because you know what? No one says, oh, I want to submit myself to Satan, except for stupid people who just need a lot of attention. No one is actually saying that outright. The way that Satan has a right, a license to do business through us is through our sin. So yeah, he's using the greed of the Biden family. That's the chink in the armor by which he's slithering through and executing his agenda. But you know what? God's fulfilling his words. It's not about politics. It's not about Satan. It's about God. He's fulfilling his words. He is fulfilling his plan. Doesn't do any good for you to be upset all day long about what Biden's doing and what he's getting away with. Because you know what? When you keep rehashing that, I'm not saying that, he shouldn't be held accountable, but I also believe that God holds people accountable. I also believe that God's going to fulfill his words and that he's doing something here and that he's going to reveal his glory to the objects of his mercy through those objects of his wrath. I'm not deluded. I don't think that they have more power over me than they do. They don't have any power over me but what God has given them. And that's the reason I can speak to you in the way that I do, because by the time that I am brought into captivity for what I'm speaking, God is the only one who has allowed that. God is the only one who has given power to anyone to do anything to me. It's not going to prohibit me from speaking what he tells me to speak, because he is the only one I fear. It will be worse for me to not speak the things he tells me to speak than it would for me to be afraid of people who will kill my body. I'm not afraid of that. And I believe in the joy that's set before me. Please discern this message with God.